This podcast is brought to you by the Orlando Economic Partnership. Welcome to the City Playbook, a new podcast that's going to take you behind the ideas, the innovation, and the initiatives shaping the future of Orlando. I'm Tim Giuliani, President and CEO of the Orlando Economic Partnership. If you've ever wondered what it takes to make a city a place people want to live, play, build, belong, develop, then this is the show for you. This is for policymakers, business leaders, students, residents, anyone that's paying attention to how the future of Orlando is taking shape. We're going to have conversations that typically happen behind closed doors, give you access to the decision makers and the difference makers that are shaping the future of Central Florida. So if you're curious about what's next for Orlando, and join us as we build the city together. Orlando isn't just growing, it's transforming. Through the bold and ambitious Vision 2045 plan, we're reimagining Orlando as a global creative capital, a world-class hub for innovation, business, entertainment, and more. I'm here with Steven Pedigo with Resonance Consultancy, who's known for its work at the intersection of place branding, urban planning, and economic strategy. Thanks for being with us. I've got to ask you, Steven, so how do you get into this line of work? What got you interested?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, I'm actually a small town Texas kid. I grew up in rural East Texas.
Okay.
Went to university at the University of Texas, and then went to graduate school at Carnegie Mellon. And thought I would actually go after finishing my graduate work to work in federal government work. But I met a guy by the name of Richard Florida, who wrote The Rise of the Creative Class. Richard became my graduate advisor at Carnegie Mellon. I really just at that point kind of became obsessed with cities and economic development. It was the thing that really kind of clicked with me in graduate school. And so I've been doing this work now for about 25 years. I've worked, I think, across the globe in probably more than 175 cities at this point doing economic development strategies. So strategy work, but also I'm full-time faculty at the University of Texas at Austin. This is what I teach, and it's kind of what I really love to do. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
we both share a passion for this.
Yeah, I do.
Type of work. So I'm curious. The hard work. What a sort of stroke of luck as well of meeting Richard Florida in graduate school and being able to get onto that career path.
Totally.
And not only working with him, but in those 175 cities. I'm wondering. We're trying to really assert Orlando as a global creative capital. Yep. Barcelona, Tokyo, Montreal, all these places. So what are some of the inflection points cities go through that they have to make a decision to be something more?
Yeah. Funny enough, I like to tell Richard he was lucky enough to meet me, not me meet
Absolutely.
him. But
I would too.
No, I joke. But, I think there's a lot of things that you have to think about. Like first and foremost, I think a lot of the work that we talk about at Resonance is the idea that when you think about the places and cities that you describe, which are really interesting global communities, one of the things they've really done really well is kind of position themselves as destinations, right? And so traditionally, as we think about kind of economic development in America, we kind of think about it as kind of church and state. We do economic development and then we do tourism development. But what's interesting about those places is they've really merged this idea that you're trying to be a destination, a place that attracts both capital, talent, but also visitors, right? So all of that idea of kind of comprehensively building up to a really good brand, but also a place where people can kind of see themselves in many different lights. When I think about what sets forth really great places, I just fundamentally go back to the kind of the basics, right? Which is first and foremost, you have to be a place where people want to visit and live, right? You got to have stickiness, you got to have entertainment, you got to have software. At Resonance, we call that kind of the livability, or a lot of times we refer to it as the loveability of a city, right? It's the social cohesion that makes someone really want to stick there. So I think that's really at the forefront. But two, I think you have to think through, particularly for a lot of cities now, given technology and innovation, more in the world of AI and entertainment now, the role of what you are thinking about, which is kind of the next generation of growth about how you grow your economy, right? And so one of the cool things that y'all have done here in Orlando is take your mix of being kind of a really amazing hospitality center, entertainment center, obviously the home of Disney and other places, but use that to leverage how you can be a digital capital and think about different innovations. So I think thinking through livability, thinking through this idea of how do you build out great place where you can think about the next generation of ideas, but then also you need all the basics too. You guys are really blessed to kind of have a global airport. We know airports make a big role in all of those.
Yeah,
all those
sure.
cities you listed Global connectivity makes a huge difference, right? And we know, research after research says the two really big drivers of economic development or growth in any city. Number one, airports. Lucky for y'all, you have this global airport. And then two, just really good research institutions. And so the other thing, you've had this great kind of opportunity where you've seen UCF grow as well.
Yeah, so I can't help, the background is kind of our joint effort with Visit Orlando to tell the whole story of being a destination. So not only sort of the mouse and the roller coasters, but also the rockets, the swans, the restaurants, the virtual reality.
The mouse and the roller coasters led to the rockets, though, right? If you think about the idea of the innovation, right, that has been here.
And it all happened, Disney is kind of the known story.
Yep.
And tourism and Universal and SeaWorld. But then at the same time, we had the space race.
Yeah.
And so these two things were going on at the same time. And it's kind of underpinned the technology and the creativity of where we are today.
Yeah, I mean, it's this idea of, what you were basically describing in kind of geek speak is leveraging your kind of anchor institutions, right? Which a lot of times we think about those as just being universities, healthcare institutions, research facilities a lot of times, but they can be major corporate employers. You mentioned the space race. One of the cool things that's happening across the country. I'm from Texas. I live in Austin. But you look at, and we have been thinking about the space and aerospace race in Texas a lot as well. But a lot of what we see, I think, a lot of emerging innovation centers are reimagining what traditional kind of industries would look like, right? Yeah. So if you think about it, right? Yeah. Space was one of those things that was very much it's federally funded, but was really driven through government and through the public sector. Now the government's looking to the private sector to be the innovators, right? And so if you can do all the things we talked about earlier, global airport, create connectivity, sticktivity, you're able to garner some of that investment, right?
Yeah. And so as it comes to sort of the rankings of world cities, we know that last year, Orlando was ranked 37th.
Yep.
Which sometimes when you live in a city, you don't realize how great it is.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, have we moved up? Have we slipped? Where are we looking in 2025?
So we haven't actually updated world cities yet this year. That work happens late in the summer, but we are, and I'm going to talk about this today in my talk, is that we are releasing America's Greatest Cities, which is our updated list. Yeah. And Orlando actually does make a jump. Actually, you were, last year I think you were 14th. This year you were 11th. We tweaked that work a lot. I think one of the things that we've done with our Best Cities work, we have an interesting partnership with Ipsos now. And have measured not just, some of the things that you think about in terms of outcome metrics, job growth, visitor growth, all those types of things, but we have matched that with perception-based data now. So one of the things that this Best Cities report will ask not only how are cities performing, but we're also thinking about this question about how cities are perceived, right? Brand matters in the world of economic development. Yeah. As I tell my students at the LBJ school, economic development is storytelling, right? This is why you're doing the work with your destination group, is that you have to create a message and think about how you tell that story. And so the fact that I think Orlando has always been viewed as a place that is a great place to visit, as a place that people want to spend time, that only helps your economic development story. So one of the things that I think that you see, one of the reasons, and we'll talk about this today, one of the reasons that you see Orlando coming up in our rankings a bit pretty quickly, and I imagine this will happen when we do the global cities ranking as well, it's just that there's a perception for Orlando. A lot of folks want to visit and spend time here.
Yeah, a lot of time we spend refining that perception and expanding that perception.
Of course.
But when people think about economic development, I think too many times they think recruit a company, help with a corporate expansion. Yeah. That's a piece of it. But talk about...
It's such a small piece of it.
Talk about placemaking.
I mean, placemaking, the idea of how do you create a place and connection back to community? How do you create a place where people want to spend time? The stickiness piece of this, right? Placemaking is, what I always like to say is that, and tell my clients and students, is that placemaking is what makes us fall in love with our city. It's what makes us want to spend time there. It's the soul of the city, right? As folks would say. Yeah. And so, so many cities across the U.S. only do what you just described at the very beginning of this, right? And that is they only do business recruitment or business expansion efforts or some of that. And some of now are moving into this idea of talent development and expansion, partly because workforce is such a big piece of what we do now. Yeah. But to keep that talent and keep those people and attract all those companies and investment that you hear, you've got to make a place really where people want to spend time. And so placemaking matters. And so having a sense of, how do you program a space? How do you think about a space? How do you think about your downtowns? The urban development design all play into that. Partly just because we use space so differently now, right? I mean, traditionally, the return to the office has happened, right? Where most Americans are now going back to the office, but man, we're using that space so much differently now, right? We're spending time there, not every day of the week, maybe,
and they look different. Office looks a little different,
yeah, right, for sure. I mean, everybody talks about this. Interesting point about that is that when you look across the country, the argument is that CBDs and central business districts across the country are still seeing large vacancy rates. That is true statement. But if you look at high amenity Class A office space, right? Everything that describes where commercial real estate has taken the concept of placemaking and created a place, right? Stickiness, we can hang out in different places, go to the gym, have good coffee, maybe all those types of things. That space is off the charts, really hard to get, right? And so to your point about placemaking is the idea of doing everything we talk about with neighborhoods. And, I think you guys are having a session on 15-minute cities today. All of that matters. But there is an economic development and real estate development from a business perspective, which is a lot of our CBD districts have to really kind of replace and reimagine what their place looks like.
So I'd love to ask you a little bit more about that. So the partnerships offices actually are in downtown Orlando.
Quite walkable, by the way. Most people don't think about that.
And in the Exchange building, and they've added, they redone the gym. They've added a cafe, coffee shop. They've added a lounge for people. They continue to add these amenities. So we're seeing that here in Orlando as well. But I'm curious, when you think of these global creative cities, they all have walkable, great downtowns. But when it comes to the data, how important
Hugely
is that?
Important. Yeah, I'll talk about this today in my talk, but one of the things that we know is that visitors and talent and businesses, talent investors all want those types of things, high amenity experiences. So, when you look at the investment that happens, it is absolutely a driving decision-making factor about how people think about location decisions, how do we connect and create community, all those types of things. The cities that are really going back and reimagining this idea that their districts don't have sole purpose, right? This is the key here, right? So for so long, we thought of districts as having a sole purpose, 8 hours, 12 hours. And that's not just in CBD, pardon me, CBD districts.
Yeah, that name, business district.
It's hard. Especially at 7:30 in the morning. But it is also, reimagining what entertainment districts are like. So to your point about this idea of placemaking in global creative capital cities, the places like London, and you look at Barcelona, you look at Toronto, look at our own New York, what you see there, right, is you don't see individual districts serving a sole purpose. They sell multi-purpose ideas, and that's really important.
And even different parts of the downtown have a different flavor, different districts. It's something that here in Orlando, because we're a little bit spread out. And so you've got cool downtowns in Sanford, sort of to the north on the river. You've got out to the west, you've got Winter Garden. You've, of course, got Orlando. You have the new Lake Nona. So there's lots of flavors of this too.
Yeah, I think that's one of the great things about storytelling, about place storytelling, right? Is that you create places where that have identity, but also have different unique amenities for when people are going throughout their kind of phase of their life. We go back to Rich Florida. Rich wrote a really interesting book called Who's Your City? It's probably one of his third books.
Got it on my desk.
Yeah. It was really kind of a how-to book for folks to think about their location decisions. And what that book basically says is to your point, is that even as and it's helpful for folks making place decisions, but it's really helpful for, I think, economic development placemakers, which is to say this, is that traditionally we would think about regions having a sole note or a sole identity, right? But what's really interesting about the idea, the most successful kind of regions across the world, across the country, actually have multiple identities that resonate where you are in different life stages of your, different stages of your life. So you could be an empty nester, you could be a young professional, you could be a young professional that ends up coupling up and having children, all those types of things. You want to be able to keep people in the community. So having places that have that identity and flavor is really important.
Yeah. So you spend a lot of time looking at the best cities, whether that's in the U.S. or globally. I'm interested from your perspective on Orlando. What are some things we can learn from those best cities?
Yeah. So, I think first one of the things that I think you guys are thinking through, which is really important, is this placemaking piece is key. I think that's really, really important. I think these best cities are always thinking about how they are doing all the things that we just talked about for the last 10 minutes, thinking about identity, thinking about neighborhoods, all those types of things. So placemaking is I think super important. I think the thing that you got, look, I think there are things that people can learn from you. It's like,
Sure.
you're among the top 10, top 11 across the country. So it's not like you're, playing in the little leagues, for instance. Yeah. But this idea of reimagining industries is really important. I think the places that are going to really stand out in the next 5 to 7 years are those places that really understand how to think about, creating opportunity amongst economic development, but also making sure those workforce pipelines are really important there.
Oh, absolutely.
Hugely important. Yeah. When I think about, again, when you look at Orlando's kind of best city scores, you look at kind of livability, you guys do really well there. The kind of lovability, you kind of obviously do really well. You have a really strong brand. But the things where you guys, and then when you get to this idea of business develop, or kind of the prosperity piece, the thing that y'all have, the growth area that is there, as we looked at the data before I came here this week, is there's just a need to think about career pathways. You have some divides in your community, right? Which is, and this happens a lot of times when you build highly innovative communities, which is you build a top part of the economy that folks get really educated and really skilled. We create a lot of great wages there, and it becomes an attractive place. But the real challenge, I think, for places that like communities like Orlando that are building these tech-based economies, by the way, my hometown of Austin, Texas is facing the same issue, is how do you also make sure the people at the bottom have an opportunity to participate and close those divides?
Yes.
And I think that's a real growth area for Orlando.
Yeah. Steven, fascinating having you. Great conversation. Yeah. Very interesting topics.
Thanks for having me.
So Orlando's future is not being left to chance. It's being boldly designed and on purpose. From 15-minute cities to industry innovation, from enhanced infrastructure to inclusive growth, we're steering your course towards a dynamic and globally recognized region. If you're inspired to learn more or to get involved in shaping this visionary future, visit orlando.org/vision 2045. We're really redefining what it means to be a great city in the 21st century.